Thank you for viewing this DNN video where we're going to show you how to install any of the DNN solutions, whether it's DNN Platform, Evoq Content, Evoq Social, or a combination of those. That includes Enterprise and so on. So, in order to the first thing that we need are the download files or the installation files, and they're nothing more. The installation files are nothing more than a zip file. And there's a couple places to get them. If you are using the free version, the open source version, that is DNN Platform, you simply hover over on the right side of dnnsoftware.com. You hover over this arrow and you go to get the DNN Platform, and when you go into this area you'll have the opportunity to install a couple different ways. And so the standard process, which we would often call the manual installation process, is where you choose to install DNN Platform with this button on the left. Now, if you are a customer and you subscribed to one of the Evoq solutions, you would instead go ahead and log in using the login that you were given or that you specified during the purchasing process, and you just hover over this people icon on this right side again and choose to log in. Now once I'm logged in, and you can tell that you're logged in on the right side, you can see that whatever your avatar is, if you've uploaded one, it's there, and otherwise you'll have a generic one. When you hover over it, it'll tell you who you are, and while you get into the things like the message center and the notifications area. As a customer, you'll now have a new area under the support menu called Success Network. And when you choose that, that's where you would go to perform all of the things about your account management and getting tickets and doing reading the knowledge base articles and going to find the latest versions of the software for you to manually download or upgrade. And so I'm going to click on Software Downloads. Now, the first time you come here, there will be your service license agreement that you will have there. You would have already seen that as a customer and probably signed off on it or something like that during your purchasing process. But in this area, you'll once again you'll see it one more time. Just scroll to the bottom and click Accept, and then that would bring you here. And at the top of this area, you'll see the solution that you had purchased. In this particular case, this account has Evoq Content associated with it, and so Evoq Content is available for it, and we can choose the upgrade link if we're trying to upgrade at the moment, or we can choose New Install. There are also additional files that are available to you, whether they're the search expansion pack, the symbols package, and in other cases you might have other things here, such as if you have Evoq Content Enterprise, you might have additional resources there. But we're doing a clean installation in this video, so I'm going to choose New Install, and that will allow me to download the package. Now, it's going to my downloads folder, but I already took the opportunity to download this before the video, and we're going to go ahead and see that I have that right here. And as you can see, it's nothing more than a zip file. So I'll go ahead and open this with my zip file utility. You can use the built-in Windows one, or you can use any number of utilities out there. In this case, you see that I'm using one called 7-zip. So I have it open, and now I'm going to put it somewhere. Now you can install the DNN software anywhere that you'd like. There's lots of articles and best practices published out there for you to determine where you want it in your organization. But I'm kind of doing it on my local machine here, so I'm going to put it on my C drive. And on my C drive, I've created a websites folder where I'm going to put all my websites. So I'm going to go ahead and open that and create a new folder. This new folder I'm going to call Evoq Content. So I'm going to type that in here. And because I'm going to use that naming convention repeatedly through this demonstration, I just copied it, and now I have the folder created. The other thing I might want to do while I'm here is assign permissions to this folder. All DNN solutions require the same permissions, so I'm going to right click on this folder and go to Properties. Now, we have published in our community wiki and in our documentation the exact permissions that you need. On this particular environment, which is a Windows Server machine, you'll see in a moment where I have the user that I need to give permissions to assigned as network service. In your environment, it may be a different user, so you might want to consult not just with our documentation, but also with whoever is your web host or whoever is your systems administrator. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this to add permissions to it. And you can see here that I have a number of users that are already in here, but I'm going to add a new one called network service. And this is a very common user that you might want to be using, or that you might already be using. And so before I select this user, I need to make sure I'm pointing at the right location here. You can see that I'm currently pointing at a network area, so I'm going to choose my local machine. Now that I've done that, I can type in network service and then click OK. Now that I've clicked OK, you see network service in the list of users here, and I can go ahead and give this user at least modify permissions. The documentation will tell you can go full control, and almost any case you'll be able to run with either perfectly fine. Now, because I didn't use inetpub for my directory, the only other permission that you would want to worry about here is allowing iUsers to also get to this directory. And so I'm going to click add one more time. And by the way, we could have done both at the same time. I'm just doing this for simplicity. So I can type in the iUser's name, or I can go to advanced and choose to find them all, and I can see all the users on this machine, and here's IIS underscore iUsers. So now I'm going to click OK to accept that user, click OK again to put it into the list of users that have security applied to this folder, and we're going to leave it at the default, which allows it to have read and execute permissions, list folder content permissions, as well as the permissions to read the files and directory. So now I'm going to click OK, and at this point we're done with the file system, creating the folder, and now we can go ahead and add all of our software solution files to the folder that we just created. Now we see all the files there. We're done with the file system. So this is one of 3 places we need to touch. So that's done. The next thing is that we're going to go to the database. So this is the second place we need to go. And in here, I'm going to create a new database. Now I'm using SQL Server Management Studio, and in order to see the current system requirements, please feel free to visit our website. But right now, I'm using SQL Server 2012. So I'm going to right-click on the databases to create a new database. And like I said before, I'm going to keep my naming convention the same for simplicity's sake, and call this new database Evoq Content, and click OK. Now I have a new database, and because I'm creating a new website, I'm going to go ahead and add a login for it. It's very common for you to have a unique login for every website you have on your system. It's completely up to you. If you're unsure on the pros and cons of this, feel free to consult with your web host or your systems administrator once again. So the login name, I'm just going to call this this new user web, and I'm going to choose SQL Server Authentication because that's the type of authentication that you generally will use with websites. And I'm going to give it a password as well. And I'm going to, for this particular video, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to not enforce the password policy, but once again, that's something you need to consult with your network specialist to make sure whether or not that's something you want to do. The last thing I'm going to do here in creating this login is allowing this login to be associated with that new database I just created. And I do that by going to the user mapping portion of this dialog, and we see a listing of all the databases that are currently in this installation. And we see the one that we just created right here, Evoq Content. So I'm going to check the checkbox, and that will allow this user to at least log in when it logs in to have access to read this website. The other thing I need to do, and this is one of the requirements of DNN, is to check the checkbox for DB owner. So in your organization, this is the, or in your website, this is the role that allows this particular user to maintain the schema or the structure of your database. So it can create records, it can delete records and tables and so on. And so that's a necessary thing. At this point, I click OK. And I have my database created, and I have created a user to log into that database. So I'm done with the database portion of this demonstration. The last portion that I need to go and manage before I go to view my website is I need to go to IIS, or Internet Information Services. And you can see that right here. It looks very similar to your Windows Explorer views. And I have already selected application pools. And I did that just to show that a minimum requirement for the version that I'm currently using is version 4.0. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on sites to create a new site and add site, and now I can give it a name. So I'm going to give this one the name of Evoq content, and I'm going to come down to the next field where it says physical path and choose the path of where I just put the files from that zip file. And so I chose my C drive. I'll go to websites and choose Evoq content. Click OK. So you can bind this in any way that you'd like. DNN doesn't have a preference, but the binding is nothing more than telling IIS which domain that you want your website to respond to. It's perfectly fine to do this to localhost if you're doing this for testing purposes on your personal laptop or desktop machine. But in your servers, you'll probably already have an idea of what domain name you want to assign to it. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and give it the domain name of evoqcontent.loc, which clearly is not something that I would be able to get to outside of this machine, but I've set up this machine to respond to that domain name. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and at this point I have a new website created. So I've done the three things I need to do in order for my DNN solution to be able to be properly served and for me to see the website. So that means I can open up whatever web browser I'd like to use and go ahead and navigate to the URL that I decided to make it respond to. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and go to evoqcontent.loc, and at this point the website will attempt to load. This very first time you go to access this, there will be a long delay before you see what will be basically a one-step installation wizard. So after what may be 1 or 2 minutes, depending on the power of your machine, could have been faster, you will be looking at the installation wizard. And here you can see that it's asking me for a little bit of information. So the first thing it's asking me for is what is the top level administrator username for the entire installation. The default suggested value is host. In your environment, I'm going to highly suggest that you change that to absolutely anything else, so that way people can't guess what this username is. So just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to give it the name of DNN Training and give it a password. The next thing is, what name do I want to give to my website? So it's given the suggestion of my website. Name it anything else that you would like. And then there's a template. So the template by default is the default template, so there's no surprise there. And what that does for you is it adds kind of a baseline site to your, upon installation, adds a number of pages and content there for an example to kind of give you some idea of how you may or may not want to structure your own site. There are other options here, such as a mobile template, which does the same thing but with a mobile context, so it's more responsive and things like that. And then there's a blank template, which is it's very similar to the default template, so it's more or less designed to be a desktop experience versus a mobile experience, except there's only one page and no content added whatsoever, so it very much is a blank slate. For this video, I'm going to leave it at default. If you want to change the language, you can. So if your website's main language is one of these other ones here, like you can see, we have German, Spanish, French, Italian, and Dutch. If you needed to, or would you prefer to perform the rest of this installation using one of those languages, and for your website to use that as your primary language, you can select that at this point. What will happen when you do select that is it'll dynamically download and use that other language for you. The next step is the database information. So you saw us set that up, and as you can see here, SQL Server Express is also supported. It's not suggested for a mission critical site though. If you have a mission critical site, I would highly suggest using a full version, and that's what I happen to be using on this particular server that you're looking at right now. So I selected the other option here, and now I'm going to give it a server name. You can use local, localhost. I use a period. That means the same thing for this purpose. So that means the same thing as localhost. And the database name. If you remember, we're keeping everything the same name, so Evoq content. And then object qualifier. You probably will not have an object qualifier, and if you do, more than likely your system administrator would have given it to you. The next thing is security. It is possible to run under integrated security, but as you noticed before, we created a user specifically for this website, so I'm going to choose user defined and give it the username and password that I created just a moment ago. The final thing is, it's checked by default as database owner, so it's going to run the database as the database owner, and that's how we already set it up in the database, so there's no change needed to be made there. And so the last thing I can do is, or need to do, is click continue. It'll verify my database connection, verify I can talk to it, and then continue with the installation. When the next view loads, as you can see here, it prepares and installs all of the prerequisites that are needed. So it's doing a file and folder permissions check, adding some files and configuration options, then it's creating the database schema and putting things in the right place for the database and the initial data load. It will then install some extensions. So there's various things we call extensions in the platform and in all solutions that are under Evoq and DNN Platform. And all these extensions can work across any one of the solutions. So it works across all of them. You can find them in our open source forge or in our store at store.dnnsoftware.com. And so it's installing some default ones for you. There's a large number of them. And then it's actually creating all the entries and configuration things for your initial website using the information that you just entered in the previous view. The last thing that it does is creates that super user or that top level administrator that we just entered the username and password for. Once it completes that process, as you can see here, it will give you a blue view website button. If anything had happened at all that was an error, instead of showing 100% done, like you see here, it would show an error, and you can go to see logs and it'll show you whatever the error was there. If you are a customer, you can take that information and go to the customer success network like you saw earlier and create a ticket and let us know, and we'll help you with it. If you are just installing DNN Platform, you can take that to either our community exchange or to our community forums and do the same thing there, copy and paste it there, and somebody will help you there as well. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and click the View Website button, and in just a moment, our website that we just created, in just a couple of minutes, will be live right in front of our site, and we can begin editing content and creating a top level, a world-class website and after having only done a couple of things. So at this point, you see the website, the default website is now loading, and so the first time you create any website using DNN Platform or Evoq, you will be shown a welcome screen that gives you some initial help. So you'll have a welcome video and some other things some other videos that help you get started with your experience, getting some very fast knowledge about how to take advantage of the solution. And then you will also have the ability to go to advanced configuration settings and engaging with the community. We're going to go ahead and close this though. And now that we've closed it, you can see I have a baseline website already available for me, like I said you would with the default template. And it's given me a licensing warning because I haven't yet activated a license. And so at this point, you would activate your license under the host menu, going to activate your license, that menu option. So that's all there is to install any of the DNN solutions, whether it's DNN Platform, Evoq Content, Evoq Content Enterprise, Evoq Social, all of those different solutions. You install it all the same way, and thank you for participating in this video.